I come from academia, so it can always be tighter. Okay, so my name is Sara Jewett Nieuwoudt, and my role at Agency for All, or with Agency for All, is I am based at Wits University, and our role is to help support thinking around capacity bridging across the project. So how do we strengthen capacities to do our work well and better? I don't think it can ever be given. I really have a problem with the language sometimes that we deliver agency or we give agency. Then in the same way, you can't give empowerment, you can't deliver, because innate to those concepts is that there is an internal process, and nobody can give me a mindset. You can encourage, you can create an environment that promotes or reinforces, but you can't give that to me. However, there can be a facilitative role, definitely. And that can be directly working with people to think about critical consciousness, how we identify ourselves. But it could also be addressing the environments that makes it hard to be that person. Right? So sometimes agency isn't about working with Sarah. It could be about working with the environment that makes it easier or more difficult to negotiate sex or condom use with a partner. I often think about the environment and structure, and we put too much pressure on individuals to do certain things, to change their behaviors without looking at the context in which they're being asked to do it. But we do have these examples of people exemplifying agency when they don't have the resources, when they're up against the social norms and stuff. And there's something about a person. And I think that's an important piece of agency. Is what is it? So I do think part of agency work is also saying, what do we understand about the norms in an environment or the actual resources in an environment that would make it easier or more difficult to meet the goals? The project has been brave in the sense that there are some internal processes in place to reflect on and elicit people's responses and reflections on how things are going. Even this interview is a piece of that, right? So I think it's beginning to help us unpack both sort of real power imbalances that are just innate, like these people have certain amounts of money and make decisions about who gets it, that kind of thing. But also it's highlighting, I think, diversity of perspectives in terms of power, that maybe there's some kind of self-regulation or self-censorship that happens with some people where they say, oh, we can't talk to USAID about this. And now USAID is saying to us here, talk to us. These processes are helping us understand what our assumptions are and what our biases are, and it's giving us a chance to challenge those a little bit. North, south, what is local? These kind of conversations are not easy ones, and there probably isn't a right, a wrong, but there's a space created in the project which I think is quite unique. I do think often there are quantitative measures and things that we can talk about, and I can talk a little bit about that. But I think sometimes this process even that we're doing now of stories of capturing thinking and process is really important for this kind of thing. So I think there's some people who are still struggling to, in a part myself as well, what do we mean by this? What does it look like? In our context as an organization, but also in the communities with whom we work. What would agency look like? I don't know that there's one standard metric for. So I'm a skeptic right now that we're going to come up with a measure for agency. I would be surprised if at the end of the project everybody needs to measure agency in this one way. What I would like to see, because we also talk about local ownership and equity, is sort of a range of tools, some starting points that could be used for adaptation in different contexts so that we can have some kind of comparison of where agency fits. The other thing is, what would convince me that we've done good work is to see a shift in the power dynamics of how some of these projects and decision-making are being made moving forward? So after 4 or 5 years, are we seeing some of the regional hubs really institutionalized into those settings so that they're not just a project-based unit that once we go dissolve? So those are the things that I think I would like to see, some of the institutionalization of this thinking in a way that's meaningful for the communities that are going to continue to do this work long term, outside of knowledge products like journal articles and things like that, which are useful, or templates that are on a website. But are we finding a way to talk to the policymaker or to someone else in a more effective way? That's sort of a long, convoluted thing, but it wouldn't be like a one-off metric, I suppose. It would be sort of a constellation of some tools and measurement, but also about who is in the driver's seat of some of the decision-making when it comes to research on these areas, or in terms of who is able to design and move forward on future social and behavior change programs that incorporate agency or social norms. I've defined that using a family planning method is what people should have agency to do. But if they don't want to use family planning methods, maybe what agency is going to look like is saying, we want a big family and we have the resources to do it. We want to build up agency to have the resources to do that well, in a way that's not because this has been set by someone else as an important thing, we have to do it. And that would be a radical shift, I think, from what we see right now. It's exhausting because, this idea, this positionality of kind of being curious and being in a listening and a learning state of mind. It's wonderful, but it's also sometimes, with all the pressures we have in our lives, it's nice just to say okay, I'm just going to tick this box. And it's not an easy tick box kind of thing. So it requires a lot of commitment on the people who are asked to kind of run with this process. Yeah, you can't just keep that motivation without a certain kind of belief and trust that we're going somewhere that is better. I think the hubs will provide an opportunity to test out and connect ideas that might be coming through studies, but with the realities of a whole host of different kind of research users, whether they are other programs, whether they are government, whether they are media groups in terms of how do you communicate out to a different kind of audience or a different kind of community. So to me, they're a critical part of the bridge, the reality check for this work that we're doing. There's still a lot up in the air around the hubs and how they work. So the opportunity is really creating networks of people in these different areas that can carry forward this work beyond the project. I think without the hubs and whoever's going to buy into those hubs, we don't have a clear path to ownership beyond the project. So for me, they're core. We've done a lot of good formative work thinking how might this look and stuff, but I'm very excited to see what happens with the hubs.